Welcome to episode 24 of the Expert Cruise Show. I'm Anthony, he's Chris, and it's time to take you to sea once again, where we analyse our experiences both at sea but also a debrief post-cruise. And a little different this week because Chris was very generously invited by Carnival to board a ship that he has visited before in its kind of... It was a P&O Australia ship. In fact, before that, it was a Princess ship. But it's been rebranded. It's been given a fresh coat of paint. And now, what's it called, Chris? Do the big reveal.
It's the Carnival Adventure. And if you've been following the channel, you might have seen some live streams from on board. But yeah, this ship, as you mentioned, Anthony, she started her life as the Golden Princess for Princess Cruises, then became the Pacific Adventure for P&O Australia, and that was a change that happened during the pandemic, actually, during the shutdown. She moved across and was given a big refit for the Australian market. And then obviously when P&O Australia shut down in March of this year, she and her sister ship, the Carnival Encounter, were sent down to Melbourne, and they were given a modest refurbishment to turn them into Carnival ships. And so, having been on board a number of times, I was, in its previous... I've actually been on this ship three different lives. I've seen it as the Golden Princess, as the Pacific Adventure, and also now sailed on board as the Carnival Adventure, and was really very interested to see what had changed and what was the same. And so, it was very, very generous, Anthony, because as the channel hit 40,000 subscribers just a few weeks back, and Carnival, the team there, many of whom I still know from the P&O days, they reached out to say congratulations and offered me the opportunity to go on board on this 4-night cruise to experience the ship. And then my best mate, Luke, he found out about it, and he booked for him and his little boy to come along as well, and they paid passengers. So the live streams at least have two very distinct opinions, one from somebody who traveled free of charge, and then the other one from an actual fare-paying passenger. And what's weird is I've actually been on this ship in all three of its incarnations. I toured it as a Princess ship, as a P&O Australia ship, and I also now have cruised on it as a Carnival ship. So yeah, it's a ship with many lives.
I do love the fact that these ships kind of tend to find a new life elsewhere. Why exactly did Carnival, the kind of owner of P&O Australia, why did they decide to pull the P&O Australia brand out of that market and rebrand as a Carnival ship? What was the kind of impetus for that?
Well, when they made the announcement, I mean, firstly, I guess as a historian who's spent a lot of time researching P&O, we were very sad with the announcement, because P&O as a brand and as a company had been connected with Australia directly since 1852. So it's actually, it predated Australia being a nation. It was still just colonies when P&O first started operating here. And look, over the years, they'd established a cruising arm, which was originally P&O Holidays, but then ultimately became P&O Cruises Australia after the Carnival acquisition of P&O Princess, which took place in 2003. And they kept this brand operating. But post-pandemic, the fleet here was 3 ships. It was quite unique amongst the Carnival stable in that they had just 3 ships operating only in the Australian and New Zealand market. And they also had Carnival ships operating here as well. They had Carnival Splendor and Carnival Luminosa. So when they made the announcement, they cited operational reasons and, obviously running a small fleet within a bigger corporation has extra costs that are involved with it. So ultimately, the fleet was reduced by 1 ship. So P&O's Pacific Explorer, which was the flagship, it was sold and now sails for Star Cruises up in Asia. And the other 2, the Pacific Adventure and Pacific Encounter, they were actually sent to Melbourne and had a wet dock refit where a few changes were made to the ships, most noticeably gigantic Carnival lettering on the funnel. They don't have the whale tail, as you can imagine. Those custom-built funnels cost a fortune. So these ones had big Carnival branding added to them, and then re-entered service. And when I toured the ship, I've toured both, actually. I was on board both ships since the switchover, and they still felt very much like P&O Australia ships, but they had some Carnival elements here and there. And so I was really quite interested to go on board and do an actual cruise to see what it actually looked like and felt like when it was at sea with the Carnival team on board running the entertainment and all the Carnival activities. So when the channel reached 40,000 subscribers a few weeks back, Carnival actually reached out and said, we'd love to have you on board, because they've, the same team that worked with P&O, many of them are still there at Carnival in Australia here. So we've had a long history together, and I graciously accepted that invitation. And then, as you mentioned, my mate Luke, who has been on the channel before, he's done a number of cruises with me, he booked a ticket for him and his little boy to come along as well. So we had the opportunity to have multiple opinions, I suppose. Somebody who's traveling free of charge, which is, of course, a disclaimer I have to make. I didn't pay for this cruise. But then also Luke, who did pay for the cruise. So it was interesting to have the two of us there experiencing it for the first time as a Carnival ship together.
By switching to Carnival from P&O, does that mean that it's actually become cheaper to travel on that ship? Because Carnival is quite well priced, certainly in the US. Is it a cheaper kind of entry price in Australia?
Well, Luke's ticket wasn't, compared to what he could have accessed for a similar kind of room on board P&O Australia. P&O was actually very well priced, despite being a small fleet of just 3 ships, very different from P&O UK. So they weren't going for like premium market at all. They were definitely focused in on the entry level cruiser, the first time cruiser, people who wanted a very cheap and cheerful holiday, that kind of thing. So they were already very well priced. But Carnival is the only brand that has a year-round presence in Australia from the big international brands. We have a couple of local cruise lines here with very small ships, but Carnival's the only one that has ships that are based here all throughout the year. They don't leave the market like all of the other international brands do, particularly during the winter. And so they have, at their peak, there's 4 ships here, with Splendor and then Luminosa, which cruises here throughout our summer. But they also have Encounter and Adventure year-round, as well as Splendor. So when they first announced they were closing P&O, there was a lot of commentary about Carnival abandoning, the corporation abandoning the market and that sort of thing, which is, I don't think, justified. There was plenty of reasons to be upset about P&O leaving, but that's not one of them, because when, Celebrity or Royal Caribbean or NCL or any of the other major brands want to be here year round, I'll be the first one to say, congratulations, welcome. But at the moment, it's only Carnival that's committed to being in the Australian market throughout the winter, with the exception of a few very small local cruise lines that we do have here that run the small ships up into the Kimberley and that sort of thing. But in terms of the international brands that people know, really the only choice you've got here in winter for cruising throughout the year is Carnival.
From what I've seen from the tour that you've given, and, I watched a whole bunch of things, and pretty much everything is the same as it was on P&O. I mean, apart from them changing the lettering, and you discovered when you got up top that they'd actually painted the funnel a slightly different shade of blue. You thought it was like the same blue, but it's actually a Carnival blue.
Yeah.
But actually, most of the videos I've seen is of you and others walking around going, yep, that's the same, and that's the same, and that's the same. So kind of arguably, it's brilliant that they haven't changed anything, because, you loved that ship. Everybody seemed to love those P&O ships. And so really, it's like Carnival have listened to that feedback, and they've gone, well, if it ain't broke, why fix it? We obviously, for operational purposes, just need to rebrand it as a Carnival ship.
Yeah, that's interesting. So this ship itself was the Golden Princess, and when it transferred to P&O, which actually all happened during the pandemic, during the shutdown, P&O actually put it through a pretty extensive refit in terms of just lifting the color palette on board. The Princess ships of that era are quite beige in their appearance, lots of sort of muted colors. P&O brought a whole heap more vibrant carpeting and wall coloring that just made the whole space brighten up. And I recently went on board another Grand Class ship that still sails with Crown Princess, and she still has her Princess interior, and you can really tell the difference between the two ships in terms of the styling. When she went across to Carnival, they added a few Carnival touches here and there. So you see Carnival branding, there's Carnival's very important fun person club branding. They've changed the kids' clubs to the Carnival names. There's a cherry on top shop down on the lower level, which used to be just a normal gift shop, that sort of thing. And they brought the fun squad on board, which we'll talk about a bit later. But for the most part, the ship itself really doesn't feel that different. And I think in the live streams, Luke described it as a happy medium, because you've kind of got these ships that anyone who's traveled on P&O Australia will love, and did love, and will remember them very fondly. But then the Carnival Fun Squad and the Carnival, I guess, the entertainment team, they've got the P&O entertainment team were amazing, don't get me wrong. But they're bringing a lot of energy on board, and they're bringing people who have worked on other Carnival ships to sort of bring some of that Carnival flair onto the ships. So you have this very interesting sort of best of both worlds kind of situation happening at the moment. And you know what's really interesting for people who are Carnival travelers, because these ships are now obviously on the Carnival Cruise Line's website. People who live in America or Britain or anywhere else in the world who come to Australia can book and go on board. They offer, and when I say they, I mean Carnival Adventure and Carnival Encounter, the two former P&O ships. They offer this different onboard experience because they still have Dragon Lady, which is the Asian restaurant from P&O. They still have Angelo's, which is the Italian restaurant from P&O. They still have the Waterfront, which is the Australian-style restaurant from P&O.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because, there are two ways of looking at it. You can either criticize Carnival and saying, they've given up on the Australian market, or you can go, Carnival have really done a really good move here. They've listened to the passengers. They've kept the things that people want, people like. But they've changed the branding for obvious reasons. I mean, we don't know obviously much about operations and the inventory and the way they do their buying and everything. I mean, there's probably a whole host of back end reasons why they would need to change it and reduce the number of brands that are in that region. But ultimately, from your perspective as a customer and as a passenger, it's pretty much the same. A lot of the crew are the same crew, right? They've just changed their uniforms.
Yeah. That's another thing is actually, because I'd spent quite a lot of time on the P&O Australian fleet, I got to know quite a lot of the crew just through sight. And in fact, because I guess I'm based in Australia, if I'm going to get recognised on a ship by the crew, it's generally an Australian-based ship.
You are like a gazelle as well, so you're pretty easy to spot.
And I've got about 5,000 different shirts with this on it, so people can pick me out. But we saw a lot of people we recognised. There was lots and lots of crew that had been on the ships. I was speaking to. I mean, they still have Luke's, which is the specialty dining on these two ships, which is an Australian celebrity chef, Luke Mangan. We had a wonderful experience in that dining room on the last night, and I got chatting to the team that were giving this amazing meal. In fact, I sent you some pictures of our meal, and
it looked great.
You literally said to me when I sent pictures of Dragon Lady, and I sent pictures of Luke, and you were like, "That's not a Carnival ship."
Yeah,
it's like
well, I was on Queen Mary 2 at the time, and so you and I were texting between ships, and it was definitely a cut above the food that I was eating in the Britannia dining room. That's for certain. And so
I think the night we went to Luke's restaurant, you went to Veranda.
That's right.
And we're talking about Queen Mary 2 next week.
Yes.
And you'll tell the difference. I mean, I don't want to criticize Veranda, but you weren't thrilled with your steak. We were very happy with ours. But we got chatting to the crew there, and they were all Pacific Explorer people, and Pacific Explorer was my favorite of the P&O ships.
Yes.
She was a beautiful, beautiful ship with a great crew. So, we had lots of P&O people. The little traditions like, I know Carnival does this as well, but P&O always did the towel animals, and they have these little cutout eyes that they stick to them, and they're still doing that. But then there's members of the entertainment team, the Fun Squad, who have come across from other Carnival ships. And in fact, this cruise was one of the first ones that this ship had with a Carnival entertainment or cruise director on board. And his name was Felipe, and he was just phenomenal. So much energy. He got everybody involved. He had this sort of philosophy, like, you're on board for 4 days. You're not going to see any of these people ever again, so just give it a go. And, he had this funny little thing, Anthony, where he'd say woohoo at the end of all of his messages. And then he made a commitment that if you see him and you shout woohoo, he'll come and talk to you and stop. And he literally did. Like, we saw him throughout the ship. He's just like stopping and talking to people. Now, I had a laugh because I thought, I can't imagine this on a Cunard ship or P&O UK, celebrity, people yelling woohoo throughout the corridors. But there was 3,300 people on board. It was packed out. The ship was full. To be fair, was never designed for that many people. So there were queues and there were lines and that sort of thing. But like, it tells me that people were really having a good time and still wanted to book, which I think alleviated some of the concerns about what would happen when the P&O offering was absorbed into Carnival.
Again, like you say, there's not that many ships in your market, and the fact that people recognized that it was a Princess ship and then it was a P&O Australia ship, and now it's, I mean, of course, out of curiosity, people are going to want to go on board just to see what it's like. It's interesting what you were saying earlier, that it had that refit just before it transferred. It's almost like they knew that it was going to become Carnival. Maybe there was like in the back of their mind, they just brightened up those Princess colors and, gave it a slightly more, and it made an easier transition for it to become a Carnival ship.
Well, they've done the same thing because P&O, like, if you go back through the archives, Australia has always had a bit of a problem with getting old and secondhand ships. In fact, when we were doing the research for our P&O history book, which we co-wrote with Rob Henderson and Doug Kramer, two of the foremost P&O historians in the world, they have the Henderson and Kramer collection, which has got unparalleled archival information from the history of the company. And it includes a whole heap of stuff that was written by newspapers back in the 19th century. And there's this wonderful story from the Sydney Morning Herald back in the 1850s or 60s when it talks about how even P&O doesn't see fit to bring its best boats to the Antipodes, basically, was the wording. So we've always had these secondhand ships, and P&O did a lot of work to take ships that weren't designed for the Australian market and sort of brighten them and Australianize them, which is a strange thing to say, but like bring in pubs rather than bars and that sort of stuff, that Australian travelers maybe a bit more used to. And they'd done that with Pacific Explorer all the way back when she first came across, and they did a very similar refit for Encounter and Adventure. But when they left the P&O fleet, they were the last two in the fleet, and they sailed down to Melbourne, and they were docked next to each other in Melbourne for this sort of carnivalization. And Amy from Cruise Crazed Fam, which is another channel that you and I obviously both watch and we've spoken about, she's based in Melbourne, and she was videotaping the old P&O lettering coming off the funnels and the Carnival stuff coming up. So there's a lot of anticipation and wonder about what it would be like. And so I think a lot of people who traveled with P&O are coming back on board with this sort of apprehension of like, is it going to be familiar? And in a lot of ways it is, which I think was the biggest relief that I had when I was on board, is that they haven't changed it too much. Who knows what they'll do in a future refit? But the ship still has that really nice sort of almost semi-premium feel that the Princess ships have, with a very bright and vibrant color palette.
It's a little bit like when Cunard came up with Queen Anne, right? It's like, here's a ship for you that you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And for the people that are kind of progressive thinking and they're like, okay, I want something different. I love Cunard, but I want something different. Then it's actually worked out rather well. And then there's a bunch of people who are like, it's not Cunard enough. And the thing is, these things are so, they're just so specific to the individual.
Yeah.
But like I say, I don't really care about the ship. I've got a few bookings of ships that I don't. I'm told you I'm going on the Quantum of the Seas. I don't even really want to go on the Quantum of the Seas. Like, I've looked at all the videos, and there's nothing on there that really interests me, which is why I really needed to get a balcony on that ship, because I knew that all I really was going to do would be go to the buffet and then go to my cabin and sit on the balcony and enjoy the view. So you can get different things from different ships, but it sounds to me like Carnival are serving up more of the same and possibly improving it. That's the thing. Is Carnival is such a, I mean, I've only done one Carnival ship. I did the Carnival Splendor's maiden voyage, weirdly, out of Harwich in the UK, and it got named, and Myleene Klass was the godmother, and John Heald was there, and it was a whole thing. And I had an okay time on it, but I just knew, I looked around and I was like, this is just, what's the name of that designer who did those interiors?
Joe Farkas.
Right.
Yeah.
I looked
Yeah.
at this ship and I was like, it's just not it's not really for me. But I
It's
love
crazy, that ship.
it's crazy, but I love being on ships, so I
Yeah.
don't really care. So you can kind of make these vacations whatever you want. And
Yeah.
if you want to be private, then get a room with a balcony and just, spend the whole week on your balcony if you want
Exactly.
to. You don't have to integrate, you don't have to take part in all the organized stuff. So let's talk about what kind of went on board, because from the vlogs that you did, and I was like gripped watching your live streams while I was on Queen Mary 2, it was very interesting to kind of see you on there, and you just seem to be having such a good time.
Yeah.
So is that a differential with how it was run by P&O? Like, the Carnival are the fun ships, right? So were you having more fun now that it's been given that kind of infusion of fun?
It's interesting because we always found P&O to be very fun, and it is a little bit different with the entertainment. P&O had a very casual, very, very, very laid back, relaxed, fun, whatever goes kind of onboard atmosphere. And Carnival has the fun element of that, but I think probably it's a little bit more packed in the schedule. So there's it just feels like they've kind of amped up I guess the thing that's interesting about this trip is that we were supposed to stop at Moreton Island. So it was supposed to sail from Sydney to Moreton Island. We were going to get 2 sea days, but because of weather issues, they actually skipped Moreton Island. And so we had this extra sea day where, to make up for the fact that the ship wasn't going to be at port, not only did they provide every cabin on board with $100 on board credit, which I was very, impressed. No one asked for that, I don't think, so I was very impressed by it. But they also had a day where they just basically crammed the schedule full of everything they could possibly do. So that one day was just so much stuff happening. But little things that I noticed on this one. So it's October when we're traveling, Halloween themed. Carnival does Halloween very, very big. P&O wasn't their thing. So this ship's got this all these Halloween related elements and activities. There's Halloween treasure hunts for the children. There's a story about this Halloween character that they've got on board that they're playing on the big screen, and then there's things that you can find throughout the ship. And then they did this big Halloween party where they had everyone. I mean, it basically seemed like the whole ship was up on the top deck. And Felipe and his team were teaching everyone how to do this ridiculous dance. It was ridiculous. But I think because, firstly, as Luke put it, everyone had some liquid courage because the bar was flowing. But also the fact that it's this extra sea day that no one was expecting, and we're having this party. They had a live band on the top of the ship. Everyone kind of got involved, even those of us with 2 left feet. And so you had this weird situation where you've got 1,500 people on the top deck of the ship all dancing in unison on a dance that no one's ever heard of before. No one will ever remember how to do, but they're kind of walking you through it. So there's really there's no shame in any of the stuff that they're putting on. They're just just get involved, just have a go. And there was some of that with P&O as well. They were very much, very chilled. And a lot of the P&O people, entertainment people, have moved across to the Fun Squad. I know one of them, Michelle from Carnival Encounter, I think she was a cruise staff who became a cruise director, and now she's with a different Carnival ship. So they bringing those elements from the 2 different brands together, which I think is really nice.
It sounds like, this was the right thing to do. I mean, maybe Carnival could have been a little bit more transparent about why they were doing it, and I think that might have answered a few questions for people. But sometimes the why is a little boring, and invariably it's to do with revenue and money and cost and spend, and it means that they don't need to have a separate budget to do marketing for P&O Australia when they've already got a budget to market Carnival and stuff like that, and it's totally understandable. The world has changed. It's not the kind of roaring 90s anymore. We really do need to see a lot of these brands streamline to provide that kind of consistency. So I'm kind of down for that, and I think it's just a really good idea. especially in markets where you get the dregs of the ships. I feel so sorry for you that you get the dregs of the ships in Australia. But
I mean, we have Luminosa, which is the one that was the Joe Farkas one, and then we've got these two. They're all older ships,
right? But that's fine if they've been given some TLC and a little dry dock action. But the most important thing is the crew. The crew are well treated and they're in good spirits.
Yeah,
and it sounds to me like they are definitely on the right track with this. And you never know. Like if Carnival turns out to be a more successful brand in the Australian market, they might send another ship. I mean, they've got plenty of ships that they could send to that market.
It's really interesting as well. Like the decision to, from an operational point of view, the decision to move two Princess designs, two ships that were designed for Princess, into the Carnival fleet is quite a big decision, because Carnival has, for a long time, adopted a much more sort of forward-looking propulsion setup than what Princess had been using. They've had pods on their ships for decades. Princess has only just started using pods on the last generation, so all of their previous ships are fixed propeller, fixed rudder. So these two ships, they've got the propellers with the rudders, they've got the bow thrusters. Operationally, it's very different to running a ship with pods. And you've got Carnival crew now running the bridge and that. I mean, the P&O people obviously have been absorbed as well, but they're sharing people within the fleet who are coming across and having to learn how to use these, ships that have got the different kind of technology. So it's not a small decision. And I think what's interesting is it's very easy for people who, myself included, like I loved the P&O brand. Obviously, you can probably tell from the way I'm talking. It's like I still miss it. But it wasn't this like really simple decision to sort of absorb these two ships. It would have been a much simpler decision to just close the whole thing down, because you have to bring these ships across, you have to cross-train the crew, you've got to carnivalize the interior, you've got different propulsion and mechanics, you've got two ships that are built at totally different times for a totally different brand, designed by P&O Princess before Carnival even owned P&O Princess. And then you've got to absorb that into the fleet. So the fact that they've done that, I think it shows some level of commitment. They're both due for refits. I think Encounter is going to go in for a proper dry docking in Singapore next year, and then Adventure the year after. I don't know what that means in terms of the interior. Maybe we'll start to see more Carnival elements brought in. I kind of hope they don't. And I think, there's some stuff on board, Anthony, that I would actually not be surprised if it gets rolled out across the rest of the Carnival fleet. The Edge, for example, was a P&O Adventure experience.
Right. So tell us about the Edge, because this, and it's not to be confused with the Edge class ships that sail for Celebrity. Just explain what that is.
So it's this high adrenaline, extra sporty, extra fun activity, basically. There's a number of different things you can do. It does come with an extra fee, but they have a variety of different experiences. So ones that I've participated in include the Titanic experience, which sounds terrible on a ship, but basically what you do is you go up to the bow of the ship, right in the front of the operational area. So you go past the anchor and all that sort of thing. And you can stand right there by that forward flagpole, and you're harnessed up, and you get to put your arms out and do the "I'm the king of the world" thing from the movie. I tell you what, like that scene in the film would never have been able to happen because the wind is just too much up there without a harness.
Yeah, right.
There's a flying fox that goes across the top of the ship. You're like literally above the pool, a zip line. I've done that on Carnival Adventure, but also on Pacific Explorer.
You're very brave.
Well, the Carnival Adventure one is even faster because apparently they've just sped it up, so it's like super quick. And Luke says I look like a praying mantis, but I mean, I'll let you be the judge.
I heard him say that. Well, I called you a gazelle earlier, so
Well, he didn't do it. So
really,
he can't. Yeah, I can't.
You never.
He was too busy. He's too busy taking the video for me, I suppose. But
yeah, I wouldn't have got on that either. It's funny, we did on Queen Mary 2 at the same time that you were on that ship. They were offering a Titanic virtual reality experience. It was only an extra $15. I'd never done it before, and so we had to just go into one of the ante-rooms in Connections, and there was 6 of us, and put these headsets on and walk around Titanic. Yep. And it was rather good, but the problem was the ship was quite rocky at the time. And so when you're on in the virtual reality world and you're having to
Yeah.
kind of spin on a chair to look all the way round, it was so nauseating that several people, including my wife, had to stop. They were like, I can't
Yeah,
do this.
sure,
It's
sure.
making us feel too sick. But that was kind of brilliant. But
Yeah.
did you do the King of the World thing at the front of the ship? Because I would like to see a photograph of you
Yeah, well,
dressed as Kate Du Winter Bucator. Du Wint Bucator.
the Whip Bucator, I think it was. Yeah.
Or
I put my
Rose Du Wintucator. That's not to be
yeah,
confused with Kate Winslet, of course.
exactly. So I put my arms out, but I didn't shout.
No.
I needed some B-roll, but I put it up on screen. But like you know, there's other things that you can do that I didn't get a chance to try out. The one that is a flat no for me is walk the plank, which is basically like a metal bar that hangs over the side. You're still harnessed, but you kind of brave people go to the edge and then lean over. And no way, I'm sorry. There's like the rock climbing wall, and there's the rope ladders and that sort of thing. You can also do a thing where you go up on the actual top of the bridge, and you sit on the bridge wing in the open with, again, harnessed up. And that looks, because these ships are curved. All the structures are curved. Even at the bow, it kind of curves down. So you're kind of standing there, and the harness is helping you stay stable. So it feels pretty exciting. And look, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets rolled out on the other ships, because it's really good. And then the water slides on these two, Adventure and Encounter, they were like all in when P&O designed them. They're huge, and they've got the open section in the middle where the two come together, and you can see the partner that you're sort of racing down. It's called the Speedway Splash, I think, on Carnival, and that's lots of fun as well. And that's complimentary. You can use that one for free. You have to pay for the edge though, which is an extra. But look at me, it was busy. It was back to back bookings on that. And look, when I was going across the zip line, we beautiful weather on that day, and then just as I'm making my way across, this huge gust of wind got me, and I was going to do this wonderful like arms out as went over Luke, and instead you've got me sort of like spinning around, looking like a little bit lost up there. So
I would love to see that. I would love to see that. Well, good on you for giving those things a go. You know,
Yeah.
I thought I was brave doing the Titanic VR experience, but very much on terra firma. Well, it sounds great. Any other highlights before we finish? Anything else that is worthy of note? Because, clearly I think this is very much a positive review for this old new ship.
Old new ship, yeah. Look, I mean, I think we always found on P&O the experience in the dining rooms to be quite good. Dragon Lady on Pacific Explorer really, really impressed us. So I was really interested to see how it was here on Carnival Adventure. And it was very good. The atmosphere is nice. It's a very bespoke menu. They actually had singing. One of the waiters, she came around and she was talking to us, and she said she's going to do a little performance. And they had the whole restaurant basically singing along with her in this performance, which was lovely. Again, a bit different from how it would have been on P&O. The only thing that I miss on the P&O was the dessert they used to have. They had this chocolate spiced cake with it was like a cinnamon ice cream, and it was just amazing. That's not there anymore, but everything else seemed pretty much the same, which was great. And look, I think there were some things that I did notice, like to balance this a little bit, because obviously I want to be fair. There's more upsell with Carnival.
Yes.
They would walk around the dining room with these, particularly at breakfast time, with these beautiful looking juices and say, would you like a juice? And then they'd hold up this little plaque and show you the prices. Whereas like you could just get like an apple juice from the can, I suppose, complimentary. So there's like these little things like that. A lot more sort of opportunities to spend money on board. I think the drinks prices seemed to be higher than they were. I couldn't guarantee that, but it just felt like we were paying more for drinks. There were no drinks packages on the 4-night cruise. I think you have to have slightly more than 4 nights before they open the drinks packages up. So everyone was just buying by the glass. But again, like a lot of people were buying by the glass. Like there's a lot of people on board. There was a lot of people drinking. Their behavior seemed pretty good. I mean, for the most part, Aussies are pretty chill. So it was mostly Australians on board. That being said, there was big groups of people from other parts of the world as well. They asked at the beginning on the first show, like, where are you from? And there was a huge group, I think big family group from India who were traveling on board the ship. There were people from New Zealand who were traveling on board. There were some Americans who'd come across and were doing, holiday in Australia, and Carnival's a brand they know, so they booked on the Carnival Adventure. And the other real great benefit of this ship is that she's a Grand Class cruise ship that's had her funnel cut down so she can fit under the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is very unusual. And so we got to do the Sydney Harbour Bridge departure, where the ship goes under the bridge. It looks like it's just about to knock the bridge over, and it blows the whistle, and all the trucks and cars on the bridge hoot back, and that's pretty special. Like, as an Australian, it's pretty special, but for anyone who's coming here from like another part of the world, there's nothing more iconic than that. So that one can do it. Splendor can't get under the bridge. So this gives you an opportunity to do something pretty special.
That's great. Well, listen, I'm pleased that you had such a good time, and thanks again to Carnival for inviting you and kind of putting the red carpet out for you and your family as they did. And
we were very spoiled.
You were spoiled, and it's nice to feel like that. I wish I could say the same for my experience on Queen Mary 2.
Well, you know what? I mean, again, I want to just echo what you just said. Like, a huge thanks to the team at Carnival. A lot of people from P&O have moved across, so it's wonderful to see so many people staying with Carnival Corporation. We obviously travelled free of charge. We had an inside cabin. It was lovely for what it was. My mate Luke, he paid for his ticket. He had a obstructed ocean view. Took some of your tips, and when he was selecting his room, he got one that didn't have much of an obstruction. And he brought his son on board. If you want to see his opinion, he has a paid passenger. There's 3 live streams up on the channel, and I think it's fair to say he was equally relieved that the experience was very familiar.
A lot of Carnival passengers are extremely loyal to Carnival, and there's a reason for that. There is a level of quality and consistency and a good time that I think is the reason why people keep going back. As well as they love that kind of, what's the name of that burger bar? Is it Guy's Burgers or something?
Yeah, Guys. These ones don't have Guys. So
no, I know, but I'm saying that seems to be the rhetoric of people that go on Carnival. They're like, best burgers. It's like, okay, that's
it. And I imagine that's the sort of stuff they might bring in on a future refit. I mean, like, these ships are older now. P&O Australia, I don't think, had the budget that Carnival did. So there's a few places here and there where you can see they need tidying up. Like, I'm not the greatest at doing critical reviews because I don't let broken tile ruin a good time. I know some people get really wound up about that, but they are, you can see around the ship that they do need a little bit of love here and there.
Yeah.
But, future refit, bringing some of that Carnival stuff, try and keep some of the P&O stuff so they stand out still and a little bit different. I think you've got a really happy medium there.
Well, they'll probably see how sales go, and if it needs an injection of cash in a refit, then they could do it. But if it's selling well as it is, then if it ain't broke, why fix it? Unless of course it's a tile. All right, listen, we have to finish, but thanks for your efforts. Check out those live streams that Chris was talking about. They're here on the Maritime Historian channel. We'll come back next week on the Expert Cruise Show with that Cunard Queen Mary 2 special that I recorded whilst on board, and lots that happened there that was definitely worthy of a mention. In fact, since we recorded that, I've thought of a whole load of other stuff. So I think we should maybe do another episode of that one as well. But that's all to come. Check out the Substack, The Maritime Historian, and you can catch up with Chris's writings there. We are also on Instagram, The Expert Cruise Show. And we'll see you next week at the same time. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.